All right, so I figured I'd talk to you guys about real quick about the difference between bias-ply tires and radial tires, and why one of the reasons I don't run bias-ply tires on my projects. In order to really talk to you about this, I have to take you guys back a few years. Back in the early 70s, we had a 71 Chevy Nomad. My dad and I were down at J.C. Penney to get new tires. I guess we were just down there. I don't know if we were down there to get new tires, but he was thinking about getting new tires because I maybe had a credit card there he could buy them with. I don't know. But they used to have a service center back years ago, like Sears. And we went there, and outside they had a display of the bias-ply tire and the radial tire, and they had a cutaway. And it was kind of interesting. Back then, they did not have steel belted radials yet. So this was before steel belted radials. I believe the tires that we had were called polyglass radials, and they also had polyglass bias-ply. And the tires that were on the car were actually polyglass bias-ply, and we were looking at the polyglass radials. And they had to cut away the tire, and they showed that the cords on the radial tire go sort of this direction, and that's what the radial term means, is the cords go this way. And I believe the cords on the bias-ply went straight. Not sure. I don't remember if they even had much for cords on them, but it had a reinforcement casing on the radial tire, and my dad and I were looking at them, and I was just a kid, but I used to help my dad with a lot of car things because he didn't know anything about that sort of thing, and it was more of I was more mechanically inclined than even he was at that age. So we were over there at the place, and we were looking at the bias-ply tires, and he's kind of like, well, what do you think? And I said, well, I think we should get the radial tires, because one of the things I used to remember is my mom was from New England, and my dad was from California, and my grandmother lived in Maine. So we used to have to drive every 4 years, I believe it was. I thought it was less than that, but it was 4 years. We used to drive back to see Grandma in Maine. So we always seemed to be getting flat tires. That was our big thing. Is we were driving, and it was always a flat tire and something. Our trailer, we had a tent trailer, almost always get a flat tire. That was guaranteed. But my dad really didn't want to get a flat tire in the car, because we did get a few of those in our 67 Chevelle, and that, I remember that car getting flat tires a lot. So, and it had bias-ply tires on it. So one of the things that the salesman said, he says, this new design is designed to resist more nail, holes. And that was the biggest selling point for us. We were like, oh, wow, we got to get those. That's the main thing. We were like, hey, less nails. We're all about that. And this was, again, before steel belted radials. In fact, the next set we got was steel belted radials, because it was only like a couple years later that they came out with those. I don't remember exactly when. But anyway, so we got the new bias-ply, or the new steel belted radials, and my dad put them on the car, and immediately when he's driving it, he goes, oh my God, the car feels like so much more stable. And that was what the guy was telling us, and we were kind of like, yeah, right, you're a salesman, whatever, But the main thing we were looking at was resisting the punctures. So he goes, oh my God, it just drives so much different. It's just like, he says, it's just like totally different. Well, so many years went by, of course, before I got my driver's license. And when I got my driver's license, my ex-wife had bias-ply tires on her Datsun 810, ugly car, gross. Datsun 810, and they were, you know, so I was driving it, and I remember going around, and I wasn't, yeah, I was like, oh yeah, that's the same thing. It's just tires, they had the better tires and worse tires, big deal. I remember going into a turn and feeling all the tires like wanting to roll over and just slide. And it was like, oh my God, it was like you had to set up for the turn. So you'd have to steer way into the turn with a Bias-ply tire, and then it would kind of slide you around the corner. Totally different driving experience than driving with radials. When we go around a corner in radials, and it just bites. You can turn, and it just bites. It's that radial action of the casing being round like that enables the tire to stay in place and the rim to kind of move over a little bit. And versus the Bias-ply tire, which is more rigid, it just wants to stay in place, and then it just breaks loose and it starts to bend over. Okay, so you start to roll off onto the sides of the tire more. So they just the reason that they switched from Bias-ply to steel belted radial is because really it's just way better drivability. Some of you guys go, yeah, but it's a lot more fun to drive like that. Yeah, until you have to stop, or you have to turn a corner really fast to avoid an accident. It's just the Bias-plies really suck. They really do. I mean, they look cool. They're really nice for your car if it's just a show car and it doesn't get driven. But when you drive your car, you're really going to want the steel belted radials, because if you're driving, let's say you're driving as a daily and you're trying to look cool, and you get the Bias-ply tires to try and look cool. They have the wide whites and they have them in radial as well. So there's really no excuse. But if you wanted to get the Bias-ply because they look like this and they have the little things on them, and all that stuff, great for a spare. But when you're talking about driving with them, you'll take one drive in them, you're going to go, oh, wow, I didn't know what I was getting into. That's why I'm making this video, because when you drive with those Bias-ply tires, it's a really weird feel. I almost rolled the car going around a corner. And, the old thing with Ralph Nader and Volkswagens and them not being safe, and also, which is totally ridiculous, and as far as the rollover situation, and the Corvair, I had a 64 Corvair convertible, okay, and that car, I could, it with radial tires would just handle like unbelievable. But they had problems with them, they said, but they rolled over. And really what it was is the quality of the tires. So the tires would roll over, they'd go onto the sidewall, the rim would catch the ground, and the car would roll over. So, and that was the same issue with Volkswagens, is they came with cheap-ass Bias-ply tires. So, in all honesty, if you guys want to, risk yourselves, get the Bias-ply. You'll find out real quick that it's just not a smart move. The radial tires just are so much better. Keep one as a spare. It's cool to look at, But as far as for driving every day, if you're going to, a lot of people say on my videos that I say, oh, well, you don't drive your cars and, keep it in the garage. That's a bunch of shit. That is complete garbage, okay? I drive my cars. I just choose to drive them when it's good for the car. I don't pick out, days when I know that the traffic's really bad and, people are stupid. I avoid stupid people because I want to protect my car. I want to keep it and enjoy it. And I'd rather be driving it in a day when it's an enjoyable day, so it's an enjoyable experience to drive the car, not, oh my God, I'm late for work. I'm going to jump in the bug and dart through traffic. And that's not really fun driving in one of these anyway. So, that's more for the other cars that I have. So that's the thing, people, oh, you don't drive it as a daily, because, that doesn't mean anything. If you don't drive it as a daily, that means that you're protecting the car, and it means you still drive the car. You just don't drive it as a daily. So anyway, but that's a little bit about Bias-ply tires. Those of you guys thinking about buying them for your, the wide white bias because they look cool. I mean, if you're going to just have it as a complete show car and never really drive it at all, then maybe go that way. But if you're going to be doing what I do, which is daily driver / show cars, I don't drive them daily, but I drive them often. So there's not a week that goes by that I don't drive one of my classic cars at least 2 or 3 times. So if you're going to do that, you might want to go ahead and get the ones that look like the Bias-ply with the radials. And it's just a lot better. So anyway, I'll talk to you in the next video. Please like, share, and subscribe.